Hey guys, how you doing? This is Benjamin with Benjamin Exotics, and this video today we're going to be talking about fatness in ball pythons. I might have just sounded a little bit off topic because this guy's trying to get away. And we're going to be talking about just weight gain in ball pythons and everything you need to know, basically, almost everything you need to know, I'd say, about your ball pythons being overweight and some of the problems and how we're going to prevent this. And today I'm joined by Zucchini, an adult male normal, and he's a pretty good example of how your females should look. And warning, this video is going to be pretty blunt because there's just some matters that are not talked about nearly as much as they should be in the ball python community, and we're going to discuss these today. Very simple, but people get it wrong a lot of times, and it is costing snakes lives in some cases. So first thing we're going to talk about is obesity. Some of the problems with obesity, why we don't want our ball pythons to be overweight for an extended period of time. That's the key word, an extended period of time. And obese is just having too much weight on them where they can't perform normal function. I don't even want to say that. Just having more weight on them than something like this, okay? If your snake is twice this size but has the same bone structure, it's overweight, if that'll help you guys out. It's very hard to explain, but just looking at a ball python, it's pretty easy to tell if they're overweight or not. And the key word is extended period of time. So some of the problems we've run into, and if you look at any study of ball pythons being overweight, you'll see the common things that because of all the fat being around the liver, and other things, of course, around the heart and such, they start to lose their energy. They become lethargic. They can actually, it shortens their lifespan. Some people have even said it can shorten your ball python from living about 30 years to like 18 years. So we're talking about like a 33% loss of life in that ball python from being overweight. And some people have even said higher than that, like a 50 to 60% loss in life, meaning if they were going to live 20 years, they're only going to live like 10 years. So obesity is something that we really have to watch out for, and it's not nearly addressed at all in the ball python hobby and community. So those are the main things. It's basically just loss of life, okay? And your snake, it just sucks for the snake. Imagine having to sit down on a bed or a couch every day so big you couldn't even get out and just do basic functions like walking around. Who'd want to be like that? I wouldn't. I personally don't think most of our viewers would. I hope not. And the snakes don't like to be like that either. But with females, I don't want to say they have to be like that because that's an extreme case, but females have to gain weight and be what I would consider too fat or obese sometimes. And let me explain. So when females are in the wild, right, they go into this feeding frenzy lots of times. Actually, if they're going to breed, it has to happen because they have to store up extra energy. You have to remember, for a male, what does he have to do? He has to survive, he has to be alive, he has to have enough energy to move around, and he has to be able to have nutrients to generate sperm, and that's it. Okay? Besides that, nothing else that these males need to do besides that. Females, on the other hand, are completely different. Not only do they have to have the energy to be able to hold and move eggs around, they of course have to be able to generate and make the eggs. They need the correct calcium for them, and of course the nutrients to put into the eggs. They're almost like taking the nutrients that baby snake needs for its first few weeks, taking all that nutrients that they get from their food and putting it into the eggs. So it's sucking nutrients out of what they have. That's why they have to eat a lot more. And also, once they lay those eggs, the whole process isn't done. They're not like some other snakes that just leave. Then they have to stay and guard those eggs. So these females are not only losing lots of energy because they have to actually make the eggs, but they're losing energy because then once they've laid them, they're not eating. And this is something that is key to understand about female ball pythons and what their bodies are going to do when the breeding season, quote unquote, when it gets colder out, when the breeding season comes around. And this is something so essential to understand if you're keeping a female ball python because, in my opinion, during the breeding season, you should not feed once per week. Let me explain. When you are in the breeding season, not only are females going to want to eat more, but they're going to hold back the energy that they do get. So if you only feed them one rat a week, they're going to hold back a lot more of that one rat per week than they would normally. You're going to see them going to the bathroom less, and sometimes you see them going to the bathroom more depending on how much you're feeding them. But if it's the same feeding schedule, you'll see them going to the bathroom less because they're holding in more of that energy, right? And while this works in the wild because they put on all that energy and they get fat, but then they burn it off, right? That's how females' bodies are made in, ball pythons. To get in lots of energy, then to burn it off. get lots of energy to burn it off. And the males are meant to be slim. Males never get fat, and they won't normally let themselves get fat because it's not natural. They don't want to be like that, and it's not built into their genetic code. Females are different, however, but the problem becomes is if we feed these females on a normal feeding schedule during the breeding season, or if we don't cut it back to at least once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks, these females get to the size that they need to be to lay eggs. And you might say, well, that sounds like a good thing. Not for the average pet keeper, though, because their snakes are getting too big for what they need to be. The right size to lay eggs, to take all that nutrients and suck it out of their body, but they're too big for just, you know, normal snake things, okay? I don't want to say, that sounds kind of bad, but it's just basically the truth. They're too big than what they should be. And the problem is, when we have pets, is we're not going to breed those snakes. So if we have a female ball python, and it's not breeding, it's just putting on extra weight that it doesn't need. And then you run into one or two problems. One, you run into obesity, because the snake went through the whole breeding season, put on a bunch of weight, and did not put it off. Get rid of the energy or the extra fat it built on. Or number two, you run into feeding issues then. The snake goes, well, I have all this extra energy, and it just screws up these snake hormones, I guess you could call it, the chemical signals that run throughout their body, because they're freaking out. They're going, I'm big enough to breed, but the temperatures aren't right, all this stuff isn't being met, what's going on, should I eat, should I not eat, and their body just freaks out, and normally just leads to a stressed out snake, and a snake not wanting to eat, because they put on that extra weight, they were ready to breed, never found a mate, which would have been no problem to find a male in the wild. They normally find multiple males in the wild, actually. If you look at, you know, different documentaries and stuff they've done on ball pythons in the wild, or just books. And because of that, you knock the females' normal senses out, and you're also putting on all that extra weight on them, which is not good for their health. Now, this is something that's a little bit controversial, but it is the truth. If you look at so many studies, it shows that ball pythons, overweight, in any species that's overweight in reptiles, on average, live way less. We're talking 30 to 80% less in terms of how long they're actually living before they sadly pass away because of overweight, or being overweight. And in monitor lizards and bigger snakes, the #1 cause of death, if they're overweight, is cancer. They actually develop cancer. They can develop ovarian cancer, which is the most common, I would say, which can just completely kill the snake. And it's very hard to get surgeries to be successful when you get those problems. So overall, we're talking about ball python's fatness. It's very hard to get a ball python too fat unless it's an adult female. So here's my advice to you guys. With your adult females, feed them once every 2 to 3 weeks. When they're in the breeding season, you can feed them once a week, every other time. If you start to see your female, or even male for that matter, very rarely would it be a male, but especially with your female, if you start to see them not having a light, flexible stature where they're not lethargic from not having enough energy, but they have just the right amount of girth to them and they look healthy. If they look like they should be breeding and having eggs, if they look like most of the breeders' females out there, you're going to need to change something, because that snake is going to have problems if it continues to be at that weight and does not breed. I'm not saying go out and buy a male because your snake's going to die. I'm saying you need to be watching your snake's weight, because if not, you can have some very, very, very serious problems. Hope this video did benefit you guys. This is a pretty straightforward video on ball pythons being overweight. I've never seen a ball python overweight, personally, that was of one or two things: being fed too big of food, or been an adult female, okay, that did not get bred. Those are the only two things I've ever seen. Besides that, you feed your ball python the correct size of rat about once a week, except for your females, of course. Once they get into breeding season, you should have no problems with ball pythons being overweight. But now you guys do know the signs, you know the problems, and hopefully you guys will take my words into close consideration when thinking about your ball python's health and what their weight should actually be at to be healthy and happy for you. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you liked the video, please give it a like, and of course, if you like the channel, please subscribe. Hope you guys did enjoy this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.